Hey yo, how's it going? This video, goals for lockdown, and just my general thoughts on the whole situation as well. So yeah, this is like a couple of weeks into lockdown. Probably will come out a couple of weeks later after I produced it. Because yeah, I've a decent backlog, but we'll see. Just depends how I can get around to releasing them. So yeah, my goals for lockdown. I don't know. Should I do goals for lockdown first, or just my general thoughts? I'll do my general observations quick. So I've been looking into this like I've been following on the news for pretty much a while. So I think for me, I kind of had my initial tiny panic way before it really actually hit the UK. I think Italy was where I kind of had a little bit of an initial panic, and I was thinking about my dad and my gran who've got these conditions, who would be kind of in the vulnerable category. So yeah, I was just thinking more around that. And also kind of what I would do and stuff, and also how things would go. And I think I kind of came to terms a bit more as well. There was a really good episode on the Joe Rogan podcast I listened to. There's a guy from the CDC, I can't remember his name, who did like a fantastic podcast with Joe, basically just explaining what the situation is and saying like actually this is going to be a thing that's going to last for a while. It's not at the end of the world, but it's not something to be taken lightly. It's going to be a challenge, and we're going to have to make some changes in our lives and be smart about this. And be sensible. And so yeah, it was really refreshing because I read his book about 2 years ago. So yeah, that was really interesting. And I think for me, my observations have been is in the last couple of weeks, there are kind of two ways people have been thinking. It's either been people have either been like hysterical and are really, really worried about this to the point where they're doing panic buying, etc., and they're just grabbing masks like madmen. And then there are those who are just almost pretending like it's not even going to happen, or like it's just like the common flu, and this thing is like way overblown, etc. And I think both are just unhealthy perspectives to have, because the panic and hysteria, well, it's not reflective of the situation because it's bad, but it's not as bad as I think as people are kind of making it out to be panicking about, and like the hysteria is leading to mass stockpiling of food, which is just not necessary, because especially in the UK that's not going to be a problem. Like, I think if you compared it to some of these African countries where, they live like basically hand to mouth. So if they don't go to work, then they don't get food that day. And they have a real dilemma, and they don't have a safety net. Like if you lost your job or stuff like that, you might be able to get some benefits or support from government. But in those kind of countries, you just don't. And they just don't have the food supply chains that we do in the UK. So the idea of us having a food shortage is very unlikely unless literally everyone started panic buying. So panic buying is not a very wise or sensible thing to do. I get why people are doing it, because of course, I completely get it, emotional drive, but ultimately it's just making the situation worse, and we'd have enough food. And I think the heartbreaking thing, I think also the thing that's making people change their behaviour a bit, is seeing we had in the UK where NHS nurses were coming out and doctors and personnel were coming out from their 48-hour shifts, obviously trying to save our lives. And then they go to the supermarkets and the stores are just, the shelves are just empty, and how demoralizing that is. And that should not be it, you know, because they are doing the massive sacrifice here, sacrificing their lives to save ours, and all we're being asked to do is, you know, kind of restrict our movements, and be kind of socially sensible. So yeah, that's I think that was a bit of a change for us. But you know, like right now there's, you know, some panic buying in the UK, but you've seen like the trends in Italy and in China and in Hong Kong. It was like 2 weeks of panic buying, and then after that it was returned to a bit more normality. The shelves started to restock themselves again, because obviously everyone had done their panic buying, and there was never an issue with the supply chains in the first place. So yes, there were a few queues and stuff like that, but there wasn't going to be this kind of mass issue with starvation and stuff like that. And there are going to be some food items that are off the shelf which we would usually be able to easily buy, but they're no longer there. But you know, that's like no biggie. It's just a bit adaptable. Like you might not see as much rice or, you know, kind of pasta or potatoes, kind of that kind of stuff. But you know, it eventually return, and you know, there are other things, there are other substitutes in the meantime. So you know, that's okay. I think again, it just shows how privileged we are, you know, with just going to the shops and just being able to find absolutely anything. And it just shows, obviously, this crisis is a really wake-up call, just to show actually how lucky we are to be able to get that kind of stuff, because we definitely take it for granted normally. And then of course you have the people pretending that this is not a thing, and so they're acting pretty reckless, and they're just kind of going out and, you know, potentially, you know, spreading the virus to people who obviously might have associated with vulnerable people. So and you know, I know a few people who are acting in a way like they're just pretending like it's not going to happen, and they're blocking it out of their head. And you know, even when people kind of raise it, they kind of get almost a bit hysterical themselves and just go, you know, stop talking about it, you know, don't need to talk about it all the time, etc., etc. You know, this is not an issue, blah blah blah. And that's not just healthy. I think you should just, the best way, I think the healthiest way to approach it is the middle ground, is to, as I said earlier, is to go and realise it's a problem. It's nothing to get hysterical about. Let's not panic buy, but let's talk about it succinctly. Say what, you know, how we're going to deal with it. You know, what's it going to entail, and then we just get on with it. You know, and then we don't need to continually talk about it every time, because if you continually talk about it at the beginning, you become hysterical, and then over time you then become complacent, because it becomes a new norm. And if you're constantly being fed the news about all the latest of coronavirus, you then become a bit numb to it, and then you forget actually the significance and the danger of it, and you do again take that for granted as well. So I think a balanced approach of just kind of realizing, yes, it's going to challenge, we have to have a conversation about it. You don't have to be kind of overblown, just talk about it sensibly, calmly, and then you just carry on, and then you just think about how to cope with it. And so yeah, for me, like obviously I think you know, it's offered us, like, in some ways we are kind of lucky as well that this isn't as bad as it could be, because yes, it's very contagious, but it's not extremely deadly. Because imagine if it was just as contagious as coronavirus and just as deadly as Ebola, oh boy, would be in a different situation. So in essence, it's kind of almost a dry run for us where to prepare for pandemics, because, you know, we were not ready for this. And I think, you know, after every pandemic the world has faced, there seems to be quite big changes afterwards. But then, you know, not just on economical, etc., but I think in terms of our psychology as well, like if we remove the fact that, you know, well, this whole situation as well, I think is going to make us appreciate a lot of things more. Kind of, we are so busy, especially in the UK, with our day-to-day jobs and life being so crazy busy. You know, we forget kind of what we really actually value and in the back of our minds hold as priorities, but our actions don't really kind of show that they are priorities, aka family and friends. We never seem to be able to create enough time for them. And now, obviously, everyone's in lockdown. I think the thing that everyone's realizing is the most importantly is the family and friends. And I find it really heartwarming to see people like reconnecting and being more continuous with communication with their family and friends again. It's really nice to see. And also how you see, I think actually no, yeah, I would have done that. Yeah, I'd probably publish the video on phone calls and Skypes, etc. Already. So yeah, like it's really weird how everyone's, well, not really weird, no, it's kind of very understandable how everyone's kind of migrating from text back to phone calls and video calls, because we need that human interaction because we're social beings. So I'm a person who likes to pick up the phone, and it's been nice to have people who are a lot more willing to pick up the phone, and also just been calling out the blue and just asking, and having a general chit chat. So that's been really awesome. So it's just a massive kind of perspective change. And of course, if we can, the course is going to be very damaging. There's going to be people who lose their lives, and like the economy is going to be in real big trouble and stuff like that. But of course, if we can remove the negative side from here, this is almost a bit of a wake-up call for us to realise again what is our priorities and what do we really value, and actually how we've been living our lives recently with spending so much time on such trivial things, whether this actually is the way that we kind of want to live our lives. And rather than just kind of going into automation mode, we need to be thinking more like less passively and more kind of present about what we do prioritize, like family and friends and certain events and activities and hobbies that we enjoy, and not getting kind of rolled up in all the other garbage that we can go in life. Let's spend less time kind of scrolling through social media. That saves like hours a week, and we can spend more time maybe talking to some people or doing some hobbies we like or reading books. So yeah, in that way it's kind of been good. And I think also this kind of time where we are going to be looking like to go to a lockdown, like a lot of other countries, a lot of time to reflect, and just to be with ourselves. And I think some people are going to find that quite uncomfortable, and I think it's going to be very telling, because the people who usually are very busy in life are not very happy with being by themselves, being with their thoughts, and I think it's going to kind of reveal underlying issues within our psychology, and our mental health as well. And there's a fear that's going to be challenging for people, but then also a realization that this is something that's been neglected and it needs to be attended to, because we can't just keep plugging with these just kind of unnecessary and trivial kind of plugs, like high dopamine kind of hitting activities, and which we won't be able to actually access while we're at home. Things will become more mundane, more relaxed, and whether we can cope with that or not. And I think the people obviously who have a kind of a decent mentality or like an open-mindedness will embrace this experience, and there will be hard times for everyone, and hopefully, yeah, as I said, for those who will find it hard, will kind of make them realize what's missing for them, and how they need to live life a bit differently, whatever that may be for them, because each situation is unique. So yeah, this could almost be a kind of a pretty dark blessing in disguise. It's a double-edged sword. Like, obviously the damage is going to be great, but then there is some of these positives. Somewhat, if we can remove all the crappy stuff that this pandemic is going to provide and look at what it can provide us. And of course that gets on to, in essence, the topic of this video. For me, hobbies, or kind of my goals, for isolation, because this is a great opportunity I'm viewing as never in life again are we going to have so much free time on our hands, because life's only going to get busier and busier. There's going to be more responsibilities, more tasks, more of this kind of crap that fills our lives, and I'm never going to have a period where I'm going to have so much free time. And I'm a person who does struggle from time to time with like completing kind of personal goals, whether that could be exercise or like learning a new skill, etc. And because something happens, either I either have an injury, or I either go on holiday, or like work gets really intense, and so like I kind of stop with whatever activity I'm doing, and then I don't return to it, and all that momentum is lost. And ultimately, like the kind of the key to learning anything new, or kind of honing a new skill, or like improving, is consistency, and it's something I struggle with. And I think this is something that I've definitely got better over the years, but still a journey. And I'm glad like the progress I'm making, but this is a great opportunity where there is not going to be those distractions or those excuses or those life activities that are going to get in the way, and I can actually dedicate myself to achieving some of those things. So what I've said to myself is I'm going to up with my exercise, keep on a routine, and I'm also going to try and learn Spanish. Now I'm decent with Spanish, but I'm going to try and learn a bit more. I have a textbook and I have Duolingo. I'm going to try and do that every day, at least Duolingo every day. And it's going to be days where I'm going to have that lack of motivation and stuff like that, and it's going to be hard to get into routine. But that's what I'm going to set myself, because this is a golden opportunity, and I think I'm not going to let this time slide. I'm going to just keep going with it every day, and also this is another video as well, kind of being your best friend and not being a person who kind of in your head where you kind of beat yourself up when you kind of fail or you falter. And that's almost another video which I'm going to make a note of, because it's important. I talked about it with my girlfriend recently as well. I'm going to try and kind of keep succinct to those things, and if I miss a day or a schedule goes off, then that'll be okay. But I'm just going to try and be better than those things at those specific tasks from when I went into lockdown to when I come out. I mean, there are other tasks, like I want to continue to learn to play the guitar, but I'm not going to set that self as a target, because again, one thing in the past is I've set myself too many targets and I achieve none of them. So if I set myself 5 targets, I'll achieve none. It's better to set 2 targets and achieve 1 than 5 and none. So for me, my main target is Spanish and my exercise. I know if I can, learn my guitar a bit more, that's great, but it's not a hard target for me. I'll do it if I can. Depends on how the other 2 go as well. But I don't want to juggle too many things at the same time. I want to actually, rather than spread myself too thin, I actually want to get really good at those 2 things. And continue to do these videos as well, which is the 3rd thing, and I shouldn't be adding a 3rd thing, but I've been enjoying this and I'll try and keep it up. So yeah, those are my goals, and I think if you can, because there is going to be the issue with boredom during the lockdown, but there are people who are going to view this lockdown as or this time in isolation as surviving it, and getting through it. And I think that's gonna, if you have that kind of mentality, you're gonna find it hard, because it's almost like you're waiting for the clock to strike 4, and the time goes so much slower and it's so much more aggravating, rather than if you don't even focus on the clock and you actually kind of just focus on your activities and the day-to-day, then it'll pass 4 before you know it. And actually view this less as kind of a thing you have to survive, but more of as an opportunity where you have so much free time where you can finally dedicate yourself to some things which you usually wouldn't. So yeah, like just think about that, whether it's a language, whether it's exercise, whether it's kind of a skill, whether it's even some books. At least give yourself one thing. You say before lockdown, before isolation, whatever it's going to be. I'm not so good at this, but by the end I'm going to be a bit better. So yeah, I hope you are all staying safe and healthy. Do try and kind of obviously keep your social distancing from people, and obviously think about family and friends who may be affected. And obviously I know people losing jobs at these times, be losing jobs at these times, and are already kind of losing jobs already. So yeah, I'm just wishing you all guys the best of health, and I hope, obviously, if you can give yourselves some goals to set and a good mindset, then you won't find this lockdown too bad. All the best. Have a beautiful day, and I'll catch you guys next time.